And it's my pleasure now to invite Maury Smile, the State Director of the Colorado Office of AARP, to the stage to offer welcoming remarks.
We had a traffic jam there for a second. Where did you all go? It was so bright just a second ago. I've got to tell you, I love this venue. I love the intergenerational aspect of having everybody together here. I think it's fabulous. Thanks for allowing me to join you this late afternoon. Like Wade said, my name is Maury Smile. I'm the Colorado State Director. I think this is going to be a wonderful, informative exchange of ideas. And I appreciate the opportunity to introduce you to what I hope you will see as the new and improved AARP. No, thankfully, we have not changed our brand again, but we have dusted off our attitude, and we're focused on helping the 50-plus population get the most out of their lives, regardless of age, rather than looking at aging like a clock winding down and diminishing opportunities. This is what I love about Larimer County. Older Larimer County residents might be sitting on the porch these days, but they're probably enjoying a fine microbrew from the Napa Valley of beers after a day spent at the Rocky Mountain National Park or a run around Lake Loveland. Another likely scenario is that our friend is relaxing after a busy day volunteering with one of the community's wonderful nonprofits or cultural offerings, many of which AARP has been very proud to support. Both are likely scenarios. According to an AARP poll that was just in the field, a large percentage of Larimer County residents 50 plus enjoy the outdoor amenities, as I'm sure you all know, and a resounding 65% polled volunteer. That's a really high number from what we've seen nationally. As a fan of Fort Collins, I thought, although not a resident, I wanted to share one woman's perspective. Fort Collins is seen both as a college town and a place where people want to retire. Its close proximity to DIA allows ease of access without the daily gridlock. We Southerners admire your downtown and cultural offerings, such as the Fort Collins Art Museum and the Symphony, both of which AARP is planning on supporting. From my perspective, Fort Collins looks like a very livable community. AARP, the magazine, thought so as well. In 2003, gave Fort Collins the #1 ranking in an article titled 15 Best Places to Reinvent Yourself. More recently, Larimer County has received accolades from publications such as Smithsonian, and I thought this was interesting, to Allstate Insurance, which named Fort Collins the safest driving city. I don't know how many people knew that. I love Google. Actually, I just study up on you all the time. And most recently, the U.S. Conference of Governors said that Fort Collins is one of 2 communities positioned to lead Colorado's economic recovery. This is all really positive. Please take a moment, pat yourself on the back, thank you, neighbor. So, why are we here tonight? If Fort Collins' future is so bright, we ought to wear shades. Because this community, unlike so many other communities, is looking strategically at the future and not wearing rose-colored glasses. And I commend you for that. Interestingly, AARP's strategic priorities closely align with what you are discussing tonight about Fort Collins' future. Housing, transportation, affordable, quality, accessible health care, health and wellness, connectivity in the community, lifelong learning. Please check out AARP's Gray Matters program on our website. And one that is near and dear to AARP's collective heart, volunteering as a means of giving back as well as staying engaged. There are some other communities across the country that are doing a really good job in terms of setting visionary course while being cognizant of budget restraints. I wholly recommend an excellent resource that was put together by the National Conference of State Legislatures and AARP in December of 2011, so the data is very fresh and current. I've taken the liberty of leaving my business cards over here, and I have the website on the back, so in the spirit of time, I didn't want to take up 20 minutes telling you about what other communities are doing since you're doing such great work here tonight. But the link is on the back, and it gives a lot of examples of New York, Georgia, Vermont. It's got rural communities. It's got different cities, so please check that out. Finally, the report that I want you all to read, the authors finish up in the conclusion, and I really appreciated what they wrote. They said, and I quote, "Strategies that aid aging in place also may benefit all segments of the population and can promote intergenerational learning and interaction as older adults' knowledge and experience continue to strengthen our communities." In other words, walkability is good for all ages. Affordable housing is good for all ages. We are the fabric of the community, and we have a vested interest in seeing the entire community succeed. Please consider AARP as a partner as you move forward. Please grab one of my cards over on the side of the room. We do have we have a survey over there for a new project that AARP is going to be starting called You've Earned a Say. And if you all could fill them out and leave them over there on the table if you'd be interested, I would be most appreciative. But thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Maury. Thanks so much for coming up from Denver to provide your welcoming remarks. In a moment, we'll have our panelists come to the stage. But first, I'd like to invite Martin Carcassonne to the stage. He is our partner in this endeavor, and he's going to provide a summary of the findings from our first program in the series, which was held on November 10th last year.
Thank you, Wade. As Wade said, my name is Martin Carcassonne. I'm an associate professor of communication studies at CSU, and I direct the CSU Center for Public Deliberation, which is just a resource for the Northern Colorado area. Part of what we do is we train students and community members to help design meetings and facilitate meetings. So at each of your tables is one of my students or one of the community volunteers that helps with our project. They'll be helping a little bit later in the evening as we have some small group discussions at the end to kind of reflect on what we hear today and think about next steps as we move forward. But what I'm going to just do briefly is just briefly review the November 10th meeting that we had and highlight some of the key findings. If you look in your program, the kind of inside cover of your program has some key points. We also had at least 2 or 3 copies of about an 8-page report that I wrote, that I compiled from that first meeting. Just by a show of hands, we'll ask you later with the keypads, but how many people were at that November 10th meeting? Just get a sense of it. So yeah, quite a bit of the room. So really appreciate you all coming back with us today. First, a brief note on our title. Silver Tsunami has been a metaphor that's been used nationwide about the changing demographics. Obviously, it's not the most endearing of metaphors. So that's one of the reasons we chose to reframe it as Silver Tsunami as Golden Opportunity. Because we truly believe that these demographic changes provide an important opportunity for our community in at least 2 ways. And one way, like you've already heard, and you heard if you came on November 10th, is that having a higher percentage of older people in your population is a positive in many ways. That clearly that they're often older and wiser and experienced. They volunteer. We see that all the time. We heard that a lot in the November 10th meeting. They tend to spend money and they tend to commit few crimes. So there's a lot of positives in those there that we want to focus on and tap into. Right? And secondly, it's an opportunity because changing demographics give us a chance to come together as a community and talk about what kind of community we want to create and what we're doing well that we want to keep on doing and what we might need to work on a little bit more. So it's an opportunity, for me at least as a communication professor, a good reason to come together and talk is always a good thing no matter what. So on that note, November 10th, obviously a lot of y'all were there. We had over 140 community members join us for a discussion. We heard first welcoming remarks by former Mayor Doug Hutchinson, and then we heard from Elizabeth Gardner, who was the Colorado State demographer, that gave us a lot of information about the changing demographics. We were going to provide copies of that PowerPoint, but that just really scares people. So we have it online if you want, a lot of data. I'm just going to mention kind of a couple of statistics just to establish a little bit what she talked about. In Larimer County, the number of residents 65 and older will increase 140% in the next 20 years. So they'll go from 35,000 to 90,000 from 2010 to 2040. So that's a significant shift that's going to have impacts on our community. And we also heard from Janine Vandenberg, who talked about the changing nature of retirement and how people, especially in Colorado, retirement looks very different. People are very active and doing a lot of different things. And again, she challenged us to look at this as an opportunity and to tap into the wisdom of these older residents to help us not only kind of deal with problems that might come from that, but also to deal with broader problems. So if you look at that list, you see some of the things that we really heard. We did small group discussions, we had keypads, we did a variety of things after the speakers on November 10th. We captured all that information, and my report tries to summarize that as we keep on moving forward. The number one thing we heard across all the questions was importance of transportation and how we're going to have to think a little bit more deeply about that. One of the basic philosophical things that I work with the center is the notion of democratic governance, which is the idea that communities solve problems. And community, to solve the problems, to make a great community, you need citizens are problem solvers, but obviously government's a critical tool to solve problems, but so is nonprofits and private organizations, and we need to all work together. And it was fascinating to me that the day after that meeting, when I was driving over to the senior center to debrief and kind of think about next steps, and I already had transportation in my head, that right after I passed a transport bus and I'm pulling into the senior center, there was 3 vehicles leaving the senior center. The first one was from Saint, which is a nonprofit organization that provides transportation. The second one was from a healthcare provider that had a big bus that was providing transportation. And the third was from a residential hall or a senior living facility that had its own. Right, so right there we had public transportation, we had a private industry providing transportation, we had nonprofits. Right, and that's kind of the symbolism, I think, of the speakers that we have today, that to deal with this issue and make a better community, we're going to have, across all those lines, working together. You see some of the other highlights, obviously affordable health care and housing for seniors, particularly affordable housing and also housing geared to them. Those are much broader issues, and obviously much of the country, much of the world are dealing with those issues, but those are things we're going to have to be thinking deeply about as we go forth. We asked people about the strengths of Fort Collins, particularly for our older residents. And time and again, we heard that the outdoor opportunities, the cultural opportunities. When we asked what else, what other activities would you come up with, we didn't hear much, because people felt very comfortable that they had lots of opportunities of doing really neat things in Fort Collins and taking advantage of it. So that's a strength that we want to maintain, certainly, as we go forward. We've already heard of the intergenerational connections being important. Not only do I have my college students here running, but we also have a set of high school students that are working with the center as part of the PSD think tank that are going to be helping tonight taking note takes. Helping us take notes. So we've got quite a few intergenerational connections at this meeting itself. One of the questions we asked is, what do people want to be when they reach that age? In the top 4 answers, the first was traveler, the second was learner, which we talk a lot at CSU about lifelong learning, but I think it's really fascinating that people are thinking that's going to be the second most important thing I want to do is keep learning. The third is volunteer. We also had helper, which ranked pretty high, so volunteer and helper came out. And then the fourth, recreator. So again, the changing nature of retirement in Colorado. So you see about the volunteerism. So the last thing that we heard from them is the need to continue. People really enjoyed the meeting and wanted to keep the conversation going. That's why we're back here. We'll be back again in April and potentially in May with this series as we move forward. But we decided the most important next step is to hear from some of the key institutions, key leaders in our community, to see what's going on. Not because we want them to deal with it themselves or they're going to solve any problems, but they're going to be a key part of that. And one of the questions we'll be asking them is, okay, what is our role as a community to help? A couple quick other things. At your table, you should have a page that students can pass it up, they haven't already, with some questions. One of the things that we're trying to do is just capture some data from you of other connections as we think about all the different resources and individuals and organizations and agencies that are connected to this issue. So just jot down ones in here, especially those you think that Senior Center might not know about, so we can just compile that and give that to them. I also want to mention one of my students, Karina, is going to be up here doing graphic facilitation during the presentations. I can't claim her skills, I didn't train her. She came to me already trained and has trained herself, but she'll be kind of capturing a visual representation of the meeting as we kind of go through. You'll get a chance to look at that. And then as the speakers go, you have note cards at all your tables. If questions come up, write them on a note card and then you can give them to the facilitator and we'll kind of flag them down. We'll have some time for Q&A, but with such a large crowd, instead of dealing with the one at a time and a microphone, the questions will come to me and the senior center folks, and we'll kind of look through and kind of pull some of those questions for the Q&A. So if you have questions as they go, just write them down on those note cards.
Thank you very much, Martine. We'll hear more from Martine later in the program. At this time, I'd like to invite our panelists to the stage, and we will hear presentations from them. As we're in the transition, Martine mentioned Karina. She told me that what she is doing is graphic recording tonight's event. So that's a new term for the social media age, I guess. Martine also mentioned that at the table are index cards for you to provide questions to the panelists. We will have time for Q&A following their presentations. We are very happy to have a distinguished panel here tonight. We've invited them to tell us what their organizations are doing to prepare for our growing aging population. I will briefly introduce each panelist. We've given them a time limit so the program can continue. As I mentioned, the program handout does have a biography of each, so you can study that and learn more about them. And at this time, to kick off our panel presentation, I'd like to introduce Darren Atterbury, City Manager, City of Fort Collins. Darren?
Yes, it is. Well, thank you, everyone. As you mentioned, I'm Darren Atterbury, City Manager, Fort Collins. I've been in this position for about 7.5 years now, and it's a real privilege to be in Fort Collins and to be in this position. So as you know what the topic we're going to be talking about today. We have 5 minutes each, so I'm going to very, very quickly share a little bit about what the city is doing. And I think most of all, number one, most important thing I can stress is that we have got to be really willing to listen and learn as a city organization. We touch each of you in so many different ways, and I'll hit on those real quickly. But I think that what we're trying to do, actually Martine facilitated a conversation a couple weekends ago with my executive team and with the city council and mayor to really begin to sort of work on how we engage our citizenry. How do we get better at policy development that reflects the needs of the community rather than individual needs or perhaps strong advocates in the community, but really how do we reflect the needs of everyone in our community. So today we're going to be talking about senior needs. We have an overall strategic plan which we call Plan Fort Collins. It's really a plan that addresses so many different aspects of our local government. It's a 25-year plan, looks out 25 years. It focuses on traditional land use planning and infrastructure kinds of things. But this recent round that we went through over the last couple of years really begins to address social aspects as well. We're focused on environmental, on financial, and social. So I'm going to talk about some of the social issues here. Plan Fort Collins, again, our overall strategic plan, speaks to issues of housing. And so it speaks to the location of housing, but also the choice and type. And we need to make sure that we maintain various choices of housing, in particular as we have an aging community. The area of recreation, many of you know that we're looking at, this is a wonderful, wonderful community as it relates to recreation. It truly is world class. Parks as well, I know Bob is out here somewhere. Our parks programs, our recreation programs are incredible, but how do we really reflect the changing needs in our community? The senior center is a good example. We have a great expansion that's planned. The voters on Building on the Basics campaign supported a capital expansion to this facility, and I know that there's a citizens group that's working on going even further with that facility. The area of transportation, as was mentioned already, critical. We're a transit provider. We also obviously operate the streets and make sure they're in good shape. But pedestrian facilities, making it accessible for all demographics within our community. So we're working very hard on that and looking towards the future. I think, just as an example, in our traffic operations department, if you haven't noticed, over the last 6 years, we've spent about $400,000 on converting signage for an aging population. So that is a requirement of the federal government, but we've been doing that, and we're doing, I think, an excellent job at that. But so if you see signage that are caps and lowercase and they're larger letters, that's because of this changing needs of our senior community. Signals, the traffic signals out on the lamps, they're larger now. We're converting our entire system to larger bulbs so that people can see them better, and they're also brighter and more energy efficient. The timing in our pedestrian facilities, crosswalks across the streets in our communities. We're looking at, we've allowed greater timing for pedestrian movements across streets. So those are some examples of how what you're concerned about, what we're going to be talking about, sort of play into the daily operations of the city organization. I mentioned facilities, pedestrian facilities, making sure that we have major activity centers connected and they're accessible. Utility services, we're a full service city. We have electric utilities, water, wastewater, and stormwater all within the city organization. We need to make sure that those stay reliable, that they stay affordable, that they recognize that many people in our community are on fixed incomes, and so there's a number of different programs that are intended to really address that. Let me also say that one of the things that I think we can do a much better job at as a city organization is really looking for opportunities, for volunteer opportunities within our local government. Last year we had the equivalent of about 77 full-time employees by people who are volunteering in our community. And I will tell you, I promise you, we're going to be working very hard this year to really maximize those volunteer opportunities, because we believe there are some very smart, competent, capable people who absolutely love this community, who want to give back, and we need the help. So, and then finally, the only other thing I wanted to mention is, as a city organization, we're also dealing with an aging population. We have 54% of our city employees, about 2,000 people right now, so about 54% of those 2,000, about 1,000 people that are baby boomers and beyond in our workforce. And so that is a very significant issue as we look at succession planning and knowledge transfer. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Darren. Our next presenter is the president of the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado, Ray Caraway.
All right, thank you. From our perspective at the Community Foundation, I think we would look at this very much the same way the city would, from the standpoint of what are the challenges and what are the opportunities. And I was glad to hear Darren mention volunteerism. I think let's start with opportunities. I think one of the things that probably most of us in this room are familiar with are people that move here to this community who can live anywhere they want to live, and they pick Northern Colorado. I meet those kind of people all the time, and increasingly we're seeing those folks who are part of the older population. I think of a couple that came in my office just the other day. They literally have just moved here within the last couple of months. They are already completely engaged in the community, serving on nonprofit boards, volunteering, looking for opportunities to meet people, to get involved, and to give back to the community. I think that's an extraordinary opportunity for our community, and certainly at the Community Foundation, we want to make sure we are playing a role in helping people of all ages, but certainly taking advantage of the time and talents and abilities that the older population has to contribute. Just think of some of the ways that would be more obvious. Serving on nonprofit boards. Nonprofit organizations desperately need people who can devote time, expertise, who can come in and really make a contribution in terms of whether it's their business skills or fundraising skills or whatever. Obviously, churches, synagogues, schools, mentoring programs. I mean, what a wonderful way for older folks to be involved. We have wonderful mentoring organizations, nonprofits like Partners Youth Mentoring, CASA, court-appointed special advocates that desperately need people who have time and the ability to get involved. For people who are passionate about the outdoors, there's organizations like the Poudre Wilderness Volunteers who also desperately need volunteers. The hospitals. So there's all these wonderful opportunities to volunteer, and I think we want to play a role in that. Also, from the opportunity side of this, older people are statistically more giving. In terms of charitable giving as a percentage of income, that percentage increases rather dramatically with age. With the under 25 age group, it's 0.7% of income. With the 75 and up group, it's 3.7%. So a pretty dramatic increase. So the philanthropic ability of older people to contribute to the community, the ability to leave a legacy to the community. You know, we've talked so much. When I first got into the philanthropic world 20 years ago, I was dealing with the World War II generation. We heard so much about the transfer of wealth involving that generation. Well, now it's the transfer of wealth from, increasingly, the transfer of wealth from the baby boomer generation. So anyway, a lot of opportunities to tap into the talents, the ability of older individuals to contribute to our community. On the challenge side, just very quickly, I think of the grant-making role that the Community Foundation plays as a grant maker to nonprofits in our community. And, there's so many nonprofits that play a role in providing services to older citizens. Martine, I think, already mentioned Saint, Senior Alternatives and Transportation, Meals on Wheels. There's even an organization here in town that helps called Elder Pet Care that helps older citizens with their pets, veterinary services at low cost, Elder House. And then there's so many organizations that, the food bank and on, that while they wouldn't be necessarily focused on seniors, that is certainly a big part of who they serve. So I think looking at the role that we would play in working with nonprofits as a grant maker, as a convener, and helping our community to have a more thoughtful strategy on how our nonprofits in this community are going to provide the services, the increasing services for seniors that are going to be required. So those are just a few thoughts that I have.
Thank you so much, Ray. Our next presenter is Neil Gluckman, Assistant County Manager of Larimer County.
Thank you. Well, first I would like to thank Martine and Jan here on my right for not wearing a tie and jacket. And also I have to sing that song, One of Us is Not Like the Other, and most people here are not like that. I'm also kind of envious of this panel because a lot of what you're going to hear is, you already heard from the two previous panel members on my left, is that they have the ability to plan, they have the ability to dream, they have the ability to take their vision and make it a reality. And I'm in a place where that doesn't happen very often. In Larimer County, we really aren't that strategic. We're not very visionary. And it's not because we're not big thinkers and we're not visionary type people, and it's not because we're all Republicans there. It's also, I heard a ooh. It's because greater than 90% of what we do in Larimer County, and this is true of almost any county government, is prescribed. It's mandatory. We receive our prescription from the state and from the federal government, what services that we need to provide, and even how we have to provide them. So we have a lot of prescribed services. And because of that, we deliver services on behalf of the state of Colorado. In fact, counties are an arm of the state, so we deliver services on behalf of the state of Colorado. So we have prescribed services. We don't get to dream as much as some of my fellow panel members here. But having said that, we also are the proud deliverer and administrator of the Office of Aging, which delivers the Older American Act. I think I probably got that wrong, but I'm close enough. And by doing that, we have found our niche. And one of the niche that we have found is working in the area of medical care, and specifically around long-term care of people that need that, our loved ones. And we do that, I think, very well, and we do that in many different ways. We also recognize those of us who are baby boomers, who either have parents or we may be going through things that are very similar to having to help our parents in terms of whether they're going to go through long-term care in a residential setting, or if we're going to do that at home. Those are the things that we're looking at in terms of the next number of years. We have a number of programs through Office on Aging that helps with that. One is we have something called ARCH, A-R-C-H, and that's an information or referral service. If you have someone, whether it's you or a loved one, that will be in need of long-term care, we have an information referral service where we can help you identify the right residential service, or help you learn if you are the type of person that can take your loved one and work with them at home. I know that personally I've done that, and it's a lot of work. And speaking of that, it is a lot of work. We also have a program that either didn't exist or I didn't know about it when I was taking care of my mother, which is the Family Caregiver Support Program. And that's a program that we would help you as a person who's taking care of a loved one with different types of support. It could be respite care, it could be just plain support, just talking to somebody and learning how others are handling very similar situations. So we offer that. We also have an ombudsman who works with people that are in a facility, a long-term facility, and if they're having any problems in terms of their quality of life, we have people that will mediate and help that person get what they need. So that's another good program to keep in mind. So we're kind of in that type of medical care business, which I think is our niche. I think we do it well. If we look at our challenges, I think you might guess what I would say. The challenge for us is funding. I think we do a very good job, but for us to get from good to great, or as I think the City of Fort Collins uses, world class, we would need additional funding. So we have to prioritize our needs, and we'll do the best we can in terms of those prioritizations. But for us to get from good to great or be world class, we would need more resources. And as far as the future challenges, I think that's what we're doing here. I think of urban renewal. I don't like the term, because when I think of urban renewal, it means to me that a part of our community has we haven't paid attention to, and it's now become depressed. It's now become blighted, and just because we haven't really focused on that. And I think it's great what we're doing today is we're focusing on a large issue that I know that Larimer County is proud to be part of, and personally I'm proud to be here too to help with these issues. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Next, I've been informed of a program correction. Jan Rastall is the Director of Adult Learner and Veteran Services at Colorado State University. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And President Frank sends his regrets. I think he was really busy answering a lot of those on-campus stadium questions. So, and I can tell you right now, I won't be able to answer any of those. So, no, it's great to be here with you. I might know a lot of you out there from my former life as a state director for Colorado Elder Hostel, which is now Rhodes Scholar Program. But I have been at CSU in the current position that I'm in since 2004. Well, actually, I was hired as a coordinator, but I moved up. So what I'm really excited to tell you about are the opportunities you have to get engaged in learning at Colorado State. And I'm sure many of you might already know some of these, but we have an office now that's called Adult Learner and Veteran Services that's been created specifically to address our adult learners and our student veterans who are returning to college. We serve students from 18 who are parents that have babies that they're bringing to school with them, all the way to 60 plus and on up. And so our office is there to really help these students get connected, to learn the ropes, to understand the culture of the campus, and just to make that transition to being a college student, which we are lifelong learners here, so we can be a college student at any age, to make that transition as smooth as possible. We also have lots of learning opportunities through involvement at Pingree Park, which is the Mountain Branch campus. They offer programs that are put on by Rhodes Scholar. We have our Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. How many people are members of Osher Lifelong Learning? Yep. So we have some experts in the room here, so that's great. You can become a member of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. That is learning for enrichment. The membership fee is nominal, it's $35 a year, and that gives you access to a multitude of programs. Many of them are taught by retired professors as well as active professors at CSU. No grades, no tests. It's the best learning out there. No prerequisites for participating in a class. Believe me, it's the best. And we also have our guest program. Our guest program, that's an acronym that means Granting University Enrollment for a Specific Term. And you can actually take classes for credit at CSU without being formally admitted, up to 6 credits per semester. So that is a great community program if you want to sit in on those poetry classes or those history classes or those physics classes. There are a few classes that are offline, and there's a list of those classes on the registrar's website, but it's a great way to test the waters, put your toe in the water, see how it feels to be back in there with college students. And, you know, it's up to the professor whether you want to take those tests or not. If you want to get that full credit and a grade, you can do that. You might be able to also audit the class and just sit in and listen. So there are lots of ways that you can get engaged at CSU as a learner. And, you know, as we know, we're all lifelong learners, and we will continue to learn and grow throughout our lifespan. So we have lots of opportunities. I think, you know, speaking from my limited knowledge, because I'm not at the same level as President Frank, but I think what our challenges are really to stay engaged with our community, to stay open to listening to you all, and how we can serve you and keep you engaged and keep you a part of the CSU community, because you are all valuable resources to this community, and you have a tremendous amount of life experience that you bring to our campus culture. And how can we best tap into that? How can we best utilize that? How many veterans are out there? Raise your hand if you're a veteran. A few of you, thank you for your service. We would love to see any of you get engaged with our Student Veterans Organization. We're looking for ways to network with our student vets as mentors, to show them, to help them learn how to make that transition from being a college student back into the civilian world. But yeah, staying in touch with our community members, being open to your thoughts, your ideas, your needs, what you'd like to see the university provide for you as in terms of more learning opportunities. I think that's really our job here, is to make sure that we're connected with you, because you are so valuable to our community. And you know, we're not an island. You know, we're right smack in the middle of Fort Collins. So we need to keep those conversations open. And I really hope that, you know, if you would like to just visit our office and come on in, we're in the Lurie Student Center. There is pay for parking not too far from our office door, so it's not too hard to find us, as it can be in some places on campus. But we'd love to have you even come in, stop in, just kind of see what our office is all about. And if you're thinking about, getting that second degree or getting into scholarly research or whatever, there's always that second life. So we'd love to talk with you about your ideas. Maybe you need to finish that first college degree. That's what we're there for, is to really help answer those questions, look at your options, and see how we might facilitate that success for you. So would love to engage in those conversations.
Thank you, Jan. As noted, if you have questions for our audience or for our panelists, please jot those down on the index card and volunteers will collect those. Thanks, Jan. I can vouch for her office being easy to get to. I've been there, visited, and it is very, very friendly. Our next panelist is Gordon Thibodeau, President and CEO of United Way of Larimer County. Gordon?
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here this evening. And I've got to tell you that in January I received my Medicare card. So this has a little more meaning to me than just academic. Being part of that sort of tsunami now, I have a great interest that this works really well in our community moving forward. Well, at United Way, we've undergone a pretty significant strategic change in direction. And I think many of you may know that we've moved from being sort of a catch-all supporting all nonprofit efforts in the community to one really of more focus. And we've specifically focused on this idea of cutting poverty in half by the year 2025. And so as a result of that, my focus really is on issues related to poverty and which is really kind of a downer to sit here and talk about. But unfortunately, many of our seniors are living in poverty. And so many of the services and things that we think about in these coming years, certainly to reach our strategic goal, but also really to help ensure that all of our residents in our community have really those basic necessities met. That involves really making sure that our seniors have their needs met as well. So, our definition of what we want to do with adult care is to ensure that our seniors and persons with disabilities have the ability to live independently. So 11.6 of Larimer County's population is over the age of 65, and 6.2% of those over 65 live in poverty. Now, we're not talking about just making it from, check to check, whether that's a retirement check or a Social Security check. We're talking about living in poverty and really being in a place where essentially you have no resources. On the average, individuals in our community are going to outlive their ability to drive by 10 years, but still have the ability to live independently if they can have resources provided to them. 69%, and I found this to be a shocking percentage, 69% of adult abuse cases reported in 2010 were self-neglect cases. In these cases, individuals have lost their ability to manage their finances, their medications, house cleaning, transportation, accessing food, medical needs, just meeting basic needs. And at what point can that be sustained? Well, you'd say it can't be sustained at all if you've lost your ability to manage to eat. That is, to prepare food or even be able to understand how that works. So it's very critical, I think, as a community that we really address this, particularly as that population is going to grow. So, in addition, on the health end, of course, my colleague here on the right is going to talk a little bit more about that, but 15.7% of Larimer County residents were estimated to be uninsured in 2011. And that also is a specific problem when you're looking at medical care. So of that, we found that 11,700 adults in Larimer County are in need of dental care, and services are available to about 4,600, leaving a gap of 7,000. So we find these issues to be critical, particularly as they pertain to our seniors. So we are very, very interested in providing those services to seniors that will allow them to live independently. And to that end, we fund a significant number of services directly applying their programs to seniors. And that would be Saint, Catholic Charities Senior Outreach Program, Disabled Resource Services, Elder House, Estes Park Senior Center, Meals on Wheels Fort Collins, Meals on Wheels Loveland Berthoud, Special Transit, Volunteers of America, and additionally, the Murphy Center, that's the Sister Mary Alice Murphy Center for Hope, Alternatives to Violence, Crossroads Safe House, American Red Cross, Catholic Charities Mission, Colorado Legal Services, Community Kitchen, Crossroads Ministry of Estes Park, and the Food Bank all provide services not directly for seniors, but include seniors in the services that are provided. And I was just at the food bank today talking to Amy Pisani on another issue, and I asked her, how many of the people that you're providing services to are seniors, if you know? And she said, well, in 2011, there were 2,482 people older than 60 who availed themselves of food bank services. And as I was walking out, of course it was anecdotal, but there were about 6 people coming out of the door with baskets of food going to their car, and one couple going to a bus stop. And of those, 2 of those couples were seniors. And one couple was a pretty significantly aged senior couple. So that's 8% of the total that they served last year, and they're expecting that to grow. And Amy tells me that her biggest concern is what happens to seniors who have a food need who don't have the ability to get to the food bank. How are they going to get those services? And we as a community and United Way really need to look at how we can put together the partnership that will allow food delivery to seniors' homes. And I think that's something that I took away today as a very high on my to-do list project to get to talk to. One last thing I would like to say is that we talked a lot earlier about volunteerism, and at United Way we have a volunteer center. And that volunteer center provides resources really for anybody to get connected to a whole range of volunteer opportunities. And it's as simple as calling to be able to either get a one-time opportunity or a lifetime volunteer opportunity. We also provide board bank training. And I know Ray Caraway was talking about board individuals, seniors particularly, serving on boards of directors. And we have this opportunity to help train individuals on what's expected if they would be a board member. We run that once a quarter. We're also really in desperate need for readers to help tutor K through 3rd grade students. We're trying across the nation to get a million readers in the schools, and we'd really like to have any of you that would be interested in that to contact us. And we're also setting up a skilled volunteer effort. That is where we take somebody who is perhaps a retired lawyer, retired accountant, HR professional, and really connect them with a meaningful project with a nonprofit that's of short duration. So all of those are opportunities that we have through the volunteer center. And finally, we have a 211 call center that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So anyone can call, whether it's looking for services for themselves or for someone else, and just trying to find out how to connect with an appropriate service. And so it's as simple as dialing 211, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gordon. Our final speaker is Kevin Unger, President and CEO of Poudre Valley Hospital. Kevin?
Well, it's a real honor to be here. The graphical presentation over here will show Gordon and I with our shiny foreheads, I'm afraid. Yeah, I know. Why they shouldn't have put us together, should they? Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I was a part of the first forum that took place at the Lincoln Center, and I think it's great. We have such a great engaged community in the issues facing our seniors. At the hospital, we have a lot of challenges, and we're really looking at ways that we can streamline the care that we provide. We know that healthcare is expensive. We are pushing nearly 20% of the gross domestic product for the United States, and that's unsustainable. And so we know, as an organization, we have to figure out ways to drive down the cost of the care that we are providing. It needs to be more streamlined as well. A lot of the initiatives that we're focused on relate to access of care for the senior population. We have been looking at a lot of different programs. Our community case management program, which has community case managers go to the homes of those individuals that really need some more acute care, is an area that we've been looking into. You might have read in Colorado about our EMS program, where our EMS, when they have downtime, are now making house calls and making sure that they're checking up on some of the senior population. We also need to have clinics in very accessible places. And so I think you're going to see some fairly radical changes taking place, not only here in Fort Collins, but throughout the United States, with a push from being more of a sick care system to more wellness and prevention. With that said, we are facing our own challenges from a staffing perspective. So Darren talked about 54% of the city's workforce is in that baby boomer age demographic. About 50% of Poudre Valley Health Systems is also in about that same demographic. So they're going to be retiring, they're going to be using healthcare as well. And so we're looking at how we can better manage our workforce. There's going to be a nationwide nursing shortage. The recession kind of made it look like we don't have a problem, because a lot of people were staying in the workforce instead of deciding to retire, and we had a lot of people that looked into nursing. But we are estimating that as a nation, within the next 10 years, there'll be about 250,000 nurses that are needed to fill positions that will go unfilled. We're going to be about 150,000 physicians short in the next 10 years also to take care of this silver tsunami. And so we're very fortunate in the fact that Fort Collins is a wonderful place to be. We're able to recruit in high quality doctors and nurses, but we're not taking this lightly either, because the baby boomers are hard workers. They take their jobs very seriously, and we quite often have to replace somebody that leaves with 1.5 to 2 people, just because of the amount of work that the baby boomers were producing. And so we're going to have to look at those opportunities. We've also embarked on what's called a lean initiative, and what lean is kind of Toyota production methodology. Our job is to drive out waste within the system and try to drive down the cost of care that's provided. When we get into some of our lean initiatives and we just start charting what a patient goes through just in the emergency department for a relatively simple procedure, there's oftentimes 76 steps, of which really there's only a couple that provide value to the patient. And so a lot of it's government bureaucracy, paperwork that we have to fill out, and we got to figure out how to drive out some of that waste within the system as well. Electronic health records, they're another big initiative for us as well. I'm sure you all are tired of filling out the same paperwork whenever you go to multiple providers. Our goal is to really streamline that, cut down on the duplication of imaging and some of the other services that take place, and we're going to try to drive down the cost that way as well. We also have we're going to have capacity issues, and so national statistics show a decrease in inpatient need over the next 10 years as we start focusing more on prevention and wellness. Fort Collins is an anomaly, and so we've had a couple consultants come in and try to put together growth numbers that we need to start planning for, and they're showing a very significant increase in inpatient needs within the Fort Collins market. And so you'll see the cranes at Poudre Valley Hospital, similar to what you have for the last 25 years. But the areas that we're really going to be seeing a lot more inpatient utilization is we're expecting over the next 10 years about a 38% increase in orthopedic care. And so we're recreators. We've worn out our joints, our hips, our knees, our shoulders. And so we need a lot more orthopods, and we need to figure out how we're going to reduce the cost of the joints that are going to be implanted. A close second is spine. They're projecting a 19% increase, and so these are all very active endeavors, and we're just wearing our bodies out these days. Overall, from an inpatient perspective, we're going to see about a 14% increase throughout the hospital. Now, all the growth is really on the outpatient side, so the goal is to keep you out of the hospital. And it should be a failure of the system if people are admitted to the hospital. And these numbers are even more staggering. So we're anticipating about a 33% increase in cardiovascular needs over the next 10 years. 32% in the oncology cancer area, 33% in neurosciences, 28% in general med surg, and the list goes on. And so you are going to be seeing us adding inpatient and outpatient capacity and trying to streamline the care. Another big thing is just the relationships that we'll be developing. You'll see interesting bedfellows, so more integration of the long-term care facilities with hospital systems and the physicians and the rehabs, all trying to streamline the care that is provided and once again make it as seamless as possible for the patient. So my 5 minutes is up. I appreciate your time.
Thank you to our panelists for sharing information on what your organizations are doing. We now have time for some questions from the audience. And Barbara, are you going to fire away with questions?
Yeah, I'm going to start. Okay, it's on. In reading through these cards, a significant number of them have to do with transportation. So, without directing this to any one panelist, we would offer up the opportunity for any panelist to respond to the significant issues of transportation, primarily for regional transportation, transportation access to healthcare facilities outside the city limits, transportation that goes regularly from one part of the urban growth area of Fort Collins to another, and into the county, and obviously not being solely directed at CSU, and also dealing with either paratransit services or regular regional transportation. So if anyone can offer any of that.
Volunteers?
Yeah, so as soon as the questions started coming, Ray just handed the microphone to me. So really, we got to have some community foundation questions through all this too. Boy, I don't have an answer. Let me respond to the question. Mayor Wyckenut, who's actually right here in the front row, and I and two other council members met this morning in the mayor's office of Loveland with Berthoud and Longmont and Fort Collins representatives to talk about this very issue. We talked about really roadways, we talked about trails, and we talked about transit, mostly actually regional transit. So there are conversations going on. What we all agreed to was we're in a limited resource environment, we're all more effective if we speak with one voice. And so, for what it's worth today, as recent as this morning, these four cities were together talking about how do we form some coalitions to speak more as a region rather than as individual entities. And, the old model of each jurisdiction going out and trying to get funding worked for a long, long time. But if you're one jurisdiction going out for funding, whether it's transit or roads, or you're just not going to get funding. You've got to have these partnerships. I will say that there is a strong desire, both locally in Fort Collins and regionally, to build a robust transit system. A system that, this idea of having transit that on a grid that runs east-west and north-south in Fort Collins and is on 15-minute headways and very reliable and 7 days a week. We at City Hall have that same desire. We want to do, and our transportation planners want to have that level of service. The problem is it's very, very expensive, and there's good federal funding for acquiring buses and capital, but there's not a lot of funding for operations. So I guess I do want you to know that we know that that's a big deal. Our regional partners know it's a big deal, and it's tough. And it's going to take resources, and I don't, you know. And by the way, we do talk about world class, and thanks for mentioning that. We're very deliberate about world. It's not accidental that we talk about world class in this city and in this city organization. And so, to not have a world class transit system and a transportation system is a real big disconnect for many of us. So I wish Mayor Wyckoff could walk up and share her thoughts on that too, but maybe next year, Mayor.
Actually, we have a follow-up question from Mr. Unker. What transportation initiatives is Poudre Valley Hospital planning for the future with the new health partnerships that we see are extending as far south as Denver or beyond?
Yeah, that's a great question. We would love to develop, we have these tube systems that run throughout the hospital that deliver meds and specimens, and we would love to figure this out. What we're realizing is that the needs are for, you know, door to hospital transportation. And so while Darren catches a lot of flack for kind of the public, the bus component, we're finding, you know, there's a huge need for the connection between, of course, Poudre Valley, Harmony Campus, Medical Center of the Rockies, and now University of Colorado Hospital down in Denver. And once again, we're grappling with this. We're trying to figure out what that should or could look like, and as Darren said, it's a very expensive endeavor. We appreciate the efforts of the St. programs and some of these other initiatives. Columbine has a nice service that they run, and we're trying to figure out if we can partner with some of these other entities to make some things happen. I think it's going to be, parking and transportation is going to be on my gravestone, unfortunately, because we do spend a lot of time talking about it and rarely come up with the solutions that meet everybody's needs.
I was hoping you'd talk about one more minute because I'm trying to find a card about the new Larimer Lift program that was just submitted to us. That maybe Mr. Gluckman could fill us in on the new Larimer Lift program.
Did you hear it? Okay. Or perhaps not. The new Larimer Lift.
Okay, hi. So, my name is Danielle, and we are starting a new nonprofit to pick up where Larimer left off. And it's called The Lift. And we have county support, Joe Ferrando, Magistrate Spangler, Ruth Long from the Office on Aging, Jack Bowman and myself. We sit on the board of directors. So the county's giving us vehicles, Elder House is giving us office space. It's a go. We just got approved, I think, for a 501c3 today. So just know that it's out there and it's coming. So if anyone needs any more information, I'm at table 18. Thank you.
I knew that.
Well, I'm here. I just wanted to get in one more plug for Saint. They've been mentioned several times, but obviously, dealing specifically with seniors and transportation, it's an organization that needs volunteers, they need money, they need board members, they need support. So I just, and when you think about other nonprofits, Meals on Wheels is as much about transportation in some ways as it is about food. They need volunteers, they need money. So I just want to get a couple plugs there, and I don't want to do that at the expense of any other organizations. There's a lot of nonprofits that we could talk about, but those are just two that come to mind when we talk about transportation. And we have endowment funds at the Community Foundation for both of those.
Yay. As you can tell, transportation. On a different path, we have several questions related to older people finding physicians and other specialists who have particular